I wrote almost 3 full pages before coming across the sentence or the message that I was looking for. And that message was walk in there like God sent you. A message someone shared with me recently before I gave a speech at a conference. I guess it was hanging out in my subconscious, waiting to be brought back to the surface and explored. And I think it's fitting that it took so long for me to arrive there, to realize its value. Why? Well, to put it bluntly, I think it's because life contains more wrong turns than right ones. It's just that the right ones, when discovered, unlock some of the most beautiful things imaginable. And while we wade through the streams not meant for us, the temptation or instinct is to get mad, frustrated. Right? What a waste of time, screams the pragmatic brain. 3 full pages of wasted words? 3 months with the wrong person? 3 years doing the wrong things? When what we've yet to understand is that they weren't wrong at all. They brought us to exactly where we need to be. Our yeses are very often buried under 1,000 no's. That's not punishment, that's just life. It's often referenced as a reminder that in baseball, hitting 300 or getting a hit 3 out of every 10 at-bats essentially makes you an all-star. 3 successes out of every 10 attempts. Well, life, I believe, is harder than baseball. Sometimes its losses more numerous, its rules more convoluted, but its wins unparalleled. See, life is not a game of getting it right. Life is a game of showing up. Again and again. When you get it wrong, when you swing and miss, when things don't go the way you want them to, showing up. Being bold enough to fail spectacularly. Life is a journey. And me, sure, I've been scared to fail, scared to try, scared to risk what I had. Many times. In fact, I often still am. I just know enough now to question that resistance and hesitation in my head. Walking up to the mirror and asking, Eddie, are you not going because you have more important things to do? Or are you not going because it's going to be challenging? Are you not going because it's going to bring you to a state of vulnerability that makes you uncomfortable? And oh, how those conversations leave you feeling exposed. Right? Nothing is more difficult than the convos you have with yourself, but those are the conversations that contain the answers. The wrong things become the story. The characters push the hero forward. The chaos sharpens his skill and strengthens his resolve. It's all happening for you. The now is always of value, always. So walk through every door that opens like God sent you. See it for the miracle that it is. Pieces of a puzzle coming together, the story of a lifetime, where the only way to lose is to not go. Is to dance around the flame that is your hopes and dreams until that flame burns out. No, go right through. Wherever you are, you're there because there's value to be extracted. There are no wasted moments, just opportunities yet to have evolved. So when you fall, know that you will be wiser once back on your feet. And when you're lost, know that you will soon know the way at a depth you never thought possible. And when you're hurt, know that you will soon be in position to love harder than you have ever loved. When angry, know you'll soon be able to empathize like never before. When unsure, know that you're building confidence in real time, pulling back the layers of the quote-unquote wrong things to discover with each unveiling what it means to truly live. See, it's all you, so be there. Walk through the doors as I was reminded, like God sent you. Like you belong there. because you do. In the journey that is your life, every second matters. Every moment a rocket ship taking you to the next iteration. Every variable a piece of you coming together. So walk through those doors like they are bringing you exactly where you need to be. And you'll see in time that that is exactly what occurred. When the water rises, it's sink or swim. We pick up certain truths as we make our way through life, realizations, little awakenings, patterns that allow us to map the things around us so that we can navigate this crazy place. And here's one such realization for my own journey. When you pursue your best, you live your best life. Your best is a North Star to guide you, a bar, line, or benchmark that's always moving, a reminder that you can always do more and be more. A reminder that life tomorrow can always be different than life today. To pursue your best, in my opinion, is synonymous with capturing all that is good in this world. Capitalizing on potential is to utilize those resources in need of an architect. That pen in need of a poet, brush in need of a painter, story in need of a writer, or populace in need of a leader. It's a pursuit that not only supplements our existence here on earth. No, I believe it is, in and of itself, why we are here on earth. But like every ideal, pragmatism seems to get in the way. Meaning, well, life is more difficult in execution than it looks on paper. We can't be our quote-unquote best every day. We sometimes fall short of that mark. Our outcomes don't always align with our expectations. The perpetual journey to one's best is neither straight nor without discomfort. It's more like the navigating of a new world without a map or compass. A world that we're by default ill-equipped to take on when we begin. And I believe that 99% of success is reliant upon the willingness to move into that great unknown and allowing adversity to shape us. But that remaining 1% is a little bit different. That 1% is when we see what we've never seen, do what we've never done. It's uncovering our best in those moments we feel our worst. Climbing the highest when we're at our lowest. When the water rises, it's finding a way to swim. See, the majority of life calls for tiny adjustments. It's observing and learning and moving on. But rarely do we talk about the darkest moments, when we feel as though we are up to our neck in the trials and tribulations of life. When the world doesn't relay messages of hope or prosperity. No, the only incoming message is despair. You're essentially David looking up at Goliath. Perhaps a Goliath of your making. Perhaps not, but a Goliath nonetheless. So why here? Why are these dark moments different than the 99%? Why is a stage provided at the very time when the limelight feels further out of reach than it ever has? Because this moment is when you prove to yourself who you are. You think you've dug deep in the past? You think you've given your all back then? No, you have no idea what you're capable of. The world provides a stage in our darkest moments so that you can pull back the curtains and illuminate your strength. It floods your world with adversity so that you can trust yourself to navigate the waters. And if you can find a way here, when the walls are closing, clock is ticking, and water is rising, what can't you do? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Those moments show us what we can be, and that is why the 1% is everything. Why is it that rock bottom becomes a bridge to so many new tomorrows? Or the losses we dread most become the change we need most? The answer is simple. Because in those moments, we find within ourselves the keys to transformation. See, you didn't know that you can leap that far. And you didn't know because you've never been pushed so close to the edge, running at so fast a speed. But in those moments, you learn that you can take flight. You learn you have the power to stand again. So while the vast majority of life is saying yes when most would say no, it's how we choose to act while immersed in our lowest lows that provides the framework and the opportunity. I believe that the tears indicative of despair streaming down your face look a lot like the tears that emerge during our happiest moments. They are the same. One just precedes the other. See, despair gives you a chance to look at life differently, look at yourself differently, to look in the mirror and understand that the reflection looking back is capable of leading a revolution in your soul. And I get how hard that is, how detached from reality it might seem, but isn't that what tomorrow is? A detachment from the reality, the parameters and the rules of today. It's not until that seed is buried beneath the earth that it plants roots, that it takes aim at the sky, and when you are stuck beneath the chaos of life, you have to know that this is where you too transform. So forget yesterday's shoreline, this is where you build tomorrow's destination. Don't fixate on what is gone when you can dream of all that is to come. And don't dwell on who you were when you can celebrate all you will be. When the water rises, swim. Sometimes it's what we don't say that echoes the loudest. What we don't do that has the greatest consequences. Where we don't go that ultimately gets us lost. I remember as a teenager applying to college. I was working on the admissions essay. I was brainstorming with my grandmother, talking over possible topics and approaches. And she read me this quote that's sometimes attributed to Mark Twain, but that's beside the point. The quote states, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor. Catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. I thought this was the perfect bridge to the next chapter in my life. The latest horizon, the newest adventure. I thought it was incredible, and it was. It was exactly what I needed, and so on to that next adventure I went. But here's the thing. As life unfolded, this equation somehow transformed from exploration and dreaming and discovery into the question, well, what am I supposed to do? Somehow, without my paying attention, life turned into a checklist, a question I couldn't get wrong, a test I needed to make sure I didn't fail. It's amazing how quickly we forget the infinite breadth of life because we're focusing on the dotted line before us, the one we're supposed to walk. Sometimes we're so fixated on what the expectation is that we don't ask ourselves where these expectations are coming from. Who is so significant and wise that they know what's best for you to a greater extent than you do? See how that's an important question, and also one you can lose in your periphery as you follow that dotted line before you. When you have a destination in mind, hopes, dreams, ambitions, well, that's an adventure. When someone else has a destination in mind for you, whether this authority is imaginary or not, that's obedience. And sometimes the greatest disservice we can do to ourselves is to not stop and think, to not stop and ask ourselves where we're going and why. Do you remember when you were a child and you got into trouble, right? Sometimes you'd get sent to your room. And for me, this was agony. When it was punishment, I wanted to be anywhere but confined within those walls. I hated being sent to my room. And then finally, the door would open. My parents would say, Eddie, you can come out now. I'd go outside, play basketball for a little bit, and then oftentimes I'd find myself right back in my room. Happy, playing with my toys, whatever I was doing, not a care in the world. And it's like, what changed? Nothing but the context. Same me, same room, same toys, same whatever I was doing. It was, however, no longer a punishment. And I think this realization is worth exploring. We may not realize, we may not even be able to articulate it, but I think we long for control over our lives. We long to walk our own path. And in this situation, the path led me right back to where I was. Sometimes, though, the path leads us in the opposite direction, far away to distant worlds. The end destination is not as important as the fact that we chose it, that we asked ourselves why, and that we believe in the answer and immerse ourselves in its execution. So when Mark Twain talks about the things that we don't do holding more weight in our hearts, it's because those things we tend to skip over are often the very things that breathe life into our souls. We'll go to school to get good grades, to get a 9-to-5, to get a promotion, to get a mortgage on a home. But the audacity to open that photography studio, the nerve to think you could rent a van and travel the country, the delusion to think you could start that routine that will get you in the physical shape you've always dreamed of. See, we're lucky and fortunate to have the things that we have. The quality of life we lead now far exceeds those that came before us. Life is convenient, incredibly convenient. But what is convenience if it comes at the expense of purpose, of meaning in life? Because that's what steers the ship. A crisis of meaning ultimately mitigates everything else. There is no exploration without meaning. And without exploration, tomorrow becomes a repetition of today, not an evolution of today. And what's incredible, truly incredible, is that our purpose can be rediscovered, our paths redefined. How? By having a long conversation with, you guessed it, yourself. By putting the phone in another room, by disconnecting the Wi-Fi and spending time with you. Something along the lines of, dear self, what matters to me in this world? Where am I going right now? Is where I'm going right now aligned with what matters to me in this world? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes no. Great, but what we have now is a foundation to work off of. An awareness that should be celebrated, that you created. It's so easy to walk through life and never have that conversation. It's so easy to sleepwalk to the tune of someone else's song, the beat of other people's drums. But when you open your eyes, you see the correlation between your thoughts and your actions and your reality. You realize that when you wake up, that tendency to ask yourself what you have to do today, to reflect on your problems, those questions you assumed were normal, that you never gave much thought to. Well, now you'll see you can dismantle that notion. Now you'll see that if you can ask yourself what you have to do, you can just as easily ask yourself what you want to do, what you get to do, what life is inviting you to do. If you can reflect on your problems, you are just as capable of reflecting on the opportunity at your fingertips. If you can spend time dwelling on whether you're walking the obligatory dotted line that's been laid out in front of you, you're just as capable of redrawing that line and allowing it to pull you into a new dimension. Listen again, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Explore, but for you. Wander down those paths that have for so long piqued your curiosity. Try things you once felt like other people were entitled to, but you'd never given yourself permission. Be that for yourself, because no one will come up to you and randomly give you that green light. Dream, because without building your castles in the air, as Thoreau calls them, you live your entire life on the ground. You'll never hit targets that you don't create. And sure, there'll be a time that only you see the destination. Great, that's life, but with each step forward, as it becomes more real for you, it will make sense to others as well. Trust each step like it is in and of itself a miracle. And you'll find in time that that's exactly what each step was. And lastly, discover. Discover who you are, what you're capable of becoming. As Emerson said, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. To forge your own path, build your own life, stay true to your own heart is courage. So sail away, because you have the ability, because you are strong enough, and because the story you're about to write doesn't continue on until you turn the page on today's chapter. There's a quote from George Eliot that states, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." And see, that ability to separate the stories of yesterday from the stories of right now will always be what determine your tomorrow. I'm still searching for the best way to really articulate this message, to emphasize just how precious this moment, right now could be. If only we decided to make it so. If only we recognized the power in choosing to begin again. Now, I understand the power of habits, how they define us, and how, practically speaking, change isn't as easy as saying you're going to be something and then just becoming that thing. No, you have to build habits, your actions. They become your life, and there are plenty of resources on habit building. Like James Clear being one of my favorites and someone I point to often. One of his best quotes, he says, "The task of building a good habit is like cultivating a delicate flower, one day at a time," right? Meaning little actions over time create big results. But before any of that, before any steps, before any habits, before any action, we have to know that once a page is turned, it's gone. It becomes data to guide your next decision, and that's all. It's understanding that yesterday is not you. Only a resource for you to look back on as you reflect on what worked and what didn't, what you loved and what you didn't love, where you went and why it mattered. But you're not yesterday's losses or mistakes or tragedies. Just like today's weather is ultimately independent from yesterday's. Sure, they may follow the same patterns, same rules, same guidelines. And that's great. That's how we get the data that allows us to look back and calculate what's best for us. But ultimately, today is a new day. A day with the potential, the capability of becoming something extraordinarily beautiful. And we may think, okay, right, I get it. Sure, I can become something new. All right, let's go. But the question is, do you really believe it? Do you really understand how malleable you are? How you can bend and fold and shape yourself into something new? Because the second you get that quick blast of motivation, right, that tiny bit of courage and dip your toe in the water, what happens? Life says, not so fast. Your mind presses play on a giant projector, showing the film of who you used to be, right, not who you want to be. Social media displays a seemingly perfect collage of everyone around you pretending to live problem-free lives and prompting you to think, oh, this must mean I'm doing something wrong. Right? TV, news, media, politicians tell you that life is too hard. You're too oppressed to find your way out of this. Of course, not without their help. So why try, one might think? Friends may disappear, or worse, criticize the fact that you've changed, as if that wasn't the point of life in its entirety. And my message is this. Yes, change comes from habits. And yes, habits are small, daily decisions, but also creating that mental space to welcome in those new habits, to understand you're worthy of more, to understand right now is a beginning. That is both the greatest challenge and greatest accomplishment. Giving yourself permission amidst an endless array of adversaries. That's what makes or breaks you. Not how close you keep your running shoes to the door so that you see them and it triggers those AM workout sessions. No, that stuff's important, but does it matter if you don't see yourself as someone who's going to use those shoes as a tool to change into something new? To put them on when you don't want to, when you feel tired, when you're busy? Who are you going to choose to be? And can you hold on to that idea? See, I obviously enjoy motivation, right? I consume a video or an audio almost every morning. I feel like it gets me in the right headspace, and then I get on with my work, right? And for the most part, it does a great job of communicating to us what we need for that moment. It's like, believe in yourself. Work hard. Don't you dare give up. Amen. But where it sometimes drops the ball, in my opinion, is the why. Why believe in myself? Why work hard? Why not give up? And the answer is because we are these incredibly gifted beings with the ability to change and adapt and grow, but are confronted with a world that wants to tell you no. Change is immediately met with resistance, as if it prefers life at rest. It begs for stagnation. And you even thinking that you can rearrange the order of things shakes life at its foundation. And when we feel that, there's a default uncertainty, a mini panic. How can something be right when it just feels like every move forward is a right hook to the face? Like we're constantly pushing into the headwind. I'll never forget, it was almost 2 years into my journey as a speechwriter, a YouTuber, a content creator, right? 2 years since I left my job. And I felt guilty taking an afternoon jog. It felt like a luxury I wasn't entitled to. Something that minimal. It took time for me to stop thinking about that and enjoy it. That's how crazy it was. Something so tiny and insignificant. Now imagine the weight of the big things. With change, the hard thing is the right thing. That's a tough idea to put our hands around, to hold, to embrace. What we least want to do is so often what we need. But as Campbell says, the cave we fear holds the treasure we seek. As Peterson says, the dragon protects the gold. Jim Rohn, the winters of life give way to the springs and the summers. Nietzsche said there's no beautiful surface without a terrible depth. To become who we might be hurts. And I'm not sure why it has to be this way. Perhaps a test to weed out those who don't really want it. Or maybe it's what we learn when we leave the pieces of ourselves we no longer want behind. Or maybe it's because without that fight, without that suffering, evolution just wouldn't mean as much. But the climb, it creates the view. Regardless the reason, I hope the point comes through and it comes through loud and clear, and not just now as your alarm clock goes off and you're looking for that extra push to get up, but tomorrow, in the morning after that, when things become a little bit harder and the finish line feels a little less real, a little less visible. The person you hope to become is as real as the present moment. It's as real when you're excited and motivated as it is when you're discouraged and down. But look around you and understand that it's counterintuitive. As crazy, as frustrating as it might be, the discomfort and uncertainty does not mean you are lost or you've wandered too far. It means you're right where you need to be. It's the little price to be paid every day for monumental change. So as you look out your front door, know that more does exist. Know that it will demand more of you than you've ever given, and know that you are capable of not only meeting but exceeding those demands, and that it will be the most rewarding, incredible, meaningful journey of your life.